So now this video discusses about what we call as the factorial. So what do you think a factorial is? Let's say if we have, let's say, a number n. Now the factorial of a number n is said to be the product of all positive numbers from 1 to n. That's what we call as the factorial. It is given as the product of all positive numbers from 1 to n. That's what we call as the factorial. So which means if we have, let's say, a number n, the factorial of the number n has to be the product of the numbers from 1 up to the value of n. That's what we call as the factorial. And for instance, let's say if we have a number given, let's say 2. So what is the factorial of a number 2? You know, this is the same as having it as 1 times 2, and which is given as 2. Therefore, the factorial of a number 2 is given as 2. And let's say we have a factorial of 3. So what is the factorial of a 3? So which is the same as 1 times 2 times 3. That will be given as, what is 1 times 2? That is 2. And 2 times 3, that is 6. So the factorial of a 3 is given as 6. And let's say, how about the factorial of 4? So the factorial of 4 is now being given as, let's say in this case we'll have it as 1 times 4, actually 1 times 3 should be 1 times 2 times 3 and times 4. That will be given as, what is 1 times 2? We have it as 2, and 2 times 3, that is 6, and 6 times 4, that is should be 24. So the factorial of 4, that is 24. So that's 4 factorial. And how about, let's say if we have, let's say 6 factorial. So how should we have the value of the 6 factorial if that is the case? So we have 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 and times 6. That will be given as 720. So that is the 6 factorial. And let's say if we have 10 factorial, we'll have it as, should be 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6 times 7 times 8 times 9, and let's say times 10. That will be given as, should be 3,628,000, let's say 800. So this is a 10 factorial. You know, as the numbers are increasing, and even the factorials also keeps on increasing, actually in an exponential order. And to try to have the factorials of the following numbers in the preset. Let's say if we should have the factorial of, let's say, should be 3 factorial, we should have, let's say, 8 factorial, we should have, let's say, should be 9 factorial, we should have, let's say, that of should be 7 factorial, and some, let's say, we should have 5 factorial, if that is the case. And what do you think will be the Z factorial? Z factorial is given as 1 in all cases. And how about, let's say, 1 factorial? 1 factorial is the same as 1 as well. You should have that. So now let us see on how we can be able to multiply the factorials. Let's say, let me start with a division. Let's say if we have 5 factorial divided by, let's say, 2 factorial. So how should we be able to divide the 2 factorials? Now first thing you have to understand that the 5 factorial corresponds to have it as 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 and times 5. And the 2 factorial corresponds to have it as 1 times 2. It should be that. Now whenever we have 5 factorial over 2 factorial, and that corresponds to have it as 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 and times 5, and which is divided by 1 times 2. In this case, these will cancel. We'll only have, 3 times 4 times 5. And what is that? We have it as 12 times 5. That should be given as 16. So that is the solution. And how about, let's say if we have something like this. Let's say if we have should be 6 factorial divided by the 3 factorial. So how do you think we should have the division of this? Principle remains the same. We'll have what is 6 factorial, have it as 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6, and divide by 1 times 2 times 3, and all these will only have 4 times 5 times 6. This will give us the solution over that. So as you can see here, let's say in this case we have 6 factorial divided by 3 factorial. So in this case, as you can see, upon dividing this, what we're having is 4 factorial. Actually, what we are remaining with is 5. Should be 4 times 5 times 6. So in all cases, this is how you should have it. If we have, let's say, we have 7 factorial divided by the 5 factorial, we should have to understand that how many actually steps are we remaining with in order to reach at 7. So you see that this is the same as having it as 6 times 7. So having 7 factorial over 5 factorial, this is the same as 6 times 7, because the list of the numbers below 5 have already been cancelled with the list of the numbers below 5 on 7. As you can see here, what we have is that we have 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6, and that is for 7 factorial, should be that. And on the 5 factorial, have it as 5 times, may have it as 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5. Now these numbers have already been cancelled by the way times 7 here. So now what we are remaining is 6 times 7. So that's the point of interest. Upon having dividing the two, have that and as that. So whenever we have 7 factorial, 5 factorial, this is the same as having it as 6 times 7. That will be given as, should be 6 times 7, that is given as 42. So the answer is given as 42, like that. And how about, let's say, if we have, let's say, 10 factorial divided by, let's say, should be 4 factorial. So how do you think we should have that? Now for this case, we'll have it as 5 times 6 times 7 times 8 times 9 and times 10. And that will be given as, so what is that one? We have 5 times 6 times 7 times 8 times 9 times 10. That will be given as, it should be 151,200, like that. So we have it as 151,200. So that is should be 10 over 4 factorial. So it should be given as that. So that's how you should have to understand that one. And how about, let's say, if we have something like this? Let's say if we have, should be 20 factorial divided by, let's say, 15 factorial. So how do you think we should have this? Principle remains the same. This is the same as 16 times 17 times 18 times 19 times 20. And if we have, let's say, 9 factorial divided by, let's say, 7 factorial, this corresponds to have it as 8 factorial. Should be an 8 times 9. Should be 8 times 9. You have the solution there. And likewise, let's say if we have, should be 8 factorial divided by, let's say, 2 factorial. 8 factorial divided by 2 factorial. This is the same as having it as, should be 3 times 4 times 5 times 6 times 7 times 8. And I should have the solution there. And how about, let's say, if we have 13 factorial divided by, let's say, a 6 factorial. This is the same as having a 6. Should be 7 times 8 times 9 times 10 times 11 times 12, let's say, times 13. So you have that and as that. So now how about, let's say, let's say the multiplication of the factorials. Let's say if we have 2 factorial in terms, let's say 5 factorial. So in this case, this is the same as expressing these factorial as a separate array. So which means to have it as what is 2 factorial, that corresponds to have it as 1 times 2, which is given as 2. And how about the 5 factorial? Have it as 120. Therefore 2 factorial times 5 factorial, that corresponds to have it as, and that corresponds to have it as 2 times 120, that is given as, should be 240. So that's how you should have it there. And now you can have the following. Let's say if we have 5 factorial times, let's say 9 factorial. And how about, let's say if we have 3 factorial times, let's say 4 factorial. If that is the case, let's say have 6 factorial times, let's say 15 factorial. How should you have that one? And how about, let's say if we have the combination of the multiplication as well as the division of the factorial. Let's say if we have 2 factorial, and let's say times, let's say it should be 6 factorial divided by, let's say 4 factorial. So how do you think we should have to work on this? So now at the end of the day, you may think of expressing this as separate array. It also express this on its own, then you should have to divide. Or else you think of having, let's say, what is a 2 factorial, you have it as 1 times 2. In terms, what is a 6 factorial, we have it as, should be that of 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6. And how about 4 factorial, you have it as 1 times 2 times 3 and let's say times 4. Now for this case, we'll have to cancel this. You have to cancel 3, that, and also 4 for that one. Then we just have to multiply these numbers to have the solution there. And also try to have this at one time. Let's say if we have 2 factorial times, let's say 5 factorial, and that divided by, let's say, a 6 factorial. It should be that. Let's say if we have 3 factorial times, let's say 9 factorial divided by 10 factorial. And what if, let's say if we have, this should be 0 factorial times, let's say 7 factorial divided by, let's say 7 factorial. How should you have that? Let's say if we have 1 factorial, in that times, let's say should be 4 factorial divided by, should be 6 factorial. So try to have that at your own time. So that's how you start to understand about the concept behind the factorial. Of course, you can also use the calculator in order to have the factorial. And for instance, actually, if you can look on the calculator, we have a certain symbol that shows this. On a calculator, we do have the symbol that shows like this. We do have x, then we do have the factorial there. So that represents, so now this x represents any value. You can have, let's say, 5 factorial, let's say 10 factorial should be that. So with the calculator, so just have to press the shift, and that should be, by the way, we need to press the number, let's say a 5. Now in order to come up with a factorial here, you should have to press the shift. You have to press the shift. You have to press the shift, and then you should have to press where you have this symbol as the factorial. So you have it as 5 factorial. That will be given as, with the equal to sign, you have it as, should be, you have the solution there. So you need to press the number of your interest, then shift, then you go on the factorial symbol. So you have that. And for the sake of interest, I'm having Casio here, and the Casio I'm using, it's a 3 lines display. And that is basically used for the engineers. So on this one, you have to press, let's say you need to have a 6 factorial. In that case, what it means is that you have to place the shift, So you have 6, then you place shift, and from there you have to place where we have the symbol for the actually x factorial. Where you have 6 factorial, you'll be able to have the solution upon pressing equal sign, upon having done that one. So that's how you can have it there. So which means in all cases using calculator, let's say if you'd like to have, let's say 5 factorial, what you have to understand is that just have to press 5, then after that one you need to press the shift, then you need to press the button that is having a symbol like this. So you have 5 factorial, then press the equal sign, and that is, so here's the order of how you should have it. So you press 5 first, then after there you should have to press the shift, and upon pressing shift you should have to press the button that is showing this. Then I need to press the equal sign. You have the solution there. And let's say if we have, let's say 10 factorial, we'll have it as, we should have to press 10, then plus shift, and after that one you should have to press where you have this, you have to equal sign, you have the 10 factorial there. So that's how, that's the working principle behind the factorial using the calculator. So which means if we have, let's say 20 factorial divided by, let's say a 6 factorial, should be 6 factorial. You can use the same principle with the calculator. Just have to place, should be 20 plus shift, and plus that, and equal to, you have that one divided by a 6 plus shift, and plus that one, you have the solution. Otherwise, just have to punch these on the calculator, then divide the solutions. That would be the way out. So that's the principle behind the factorial. Thank you.